Hey guys, welcome back for my first episode review since Crystalized Part 1 released in May. Earlier today, the English version of episode 13 released. So here's my full review of episode 13, A Sinister Shadow. After Ruby narrates a brief introduction, we see her wake up in this limbo-like state where she is approached by the Overlord, who promises to revive her if she serves him. She reluctantly accepts his offer and returns to the real world, where he directs her to go to the Oni Temple. Harumi helps the Overlord transform the Oni Temple into a crystal temple, and she soon figures out his real identity, but the Overlord wins her over by promising that there will be peace in the darkness. He tells Harumi to build a Vegestone army, and we see that she's established contact with King Vangelis, and that she is indeed the mysterious Vegestone buyer. After King Vangelis was defeated, she turned to criminals to get the last of the Vegestone. Enter the present where Lloyd is horrified at what he's heard. Harumi reveals her entire plan with the monastery, and then we see a Hunted era flashback of Lloyd searching the ruins of the fallen building for Harumi. He tries to escape but is quickly stopped, and the episode ends off with Harumi revealing the Crystal King. So first off, I really enjoyed the introduction at the start of this episode. It feels like a great way to recap this character and what's happened to her over the course of the series. It also serves as a really nice transition into a revival. And this was a great scene. I mean, I had a lot of concerns about Harumi's return, but I think this episode does it pretty well. The Overlord is back in a new design for his spirit form, which looks pretty cool. It looks simple but threatening at the same time. And I think it's definitely better than his spirit design we see in Season 2. The dialogue in this scene is pretty great. It's so cool to see the Overlord back after, 8 years, 12 seasons? His voice definitely sounds different than he has in past seasons, and honestly that leads me to wonder if this is a new voice actor, but in any case, it sounds great. It's really nice how Ruby is portrayed as lost and confused, and very hesitant to go along with the Overlord's offer. I like that she's initially inclined to reject it, but then, out of desperation, accepts it. I also really love how the Overlord references Garbodot and how Ruby made the wrong decision. He manipulates her by preying on her sense of abandonment. The animation here is wonderful. Ruby's hair especially is the highlight here, and how it's just floating around. It doesn't feel stiff or solid. Last but not least, I love the parallels between this scene and Lloyd's revival at the end of Season 10. The two greatest forces of Ninjago choosing to resurrect their champions so that they can live again. It's great to see the Oni Temple back here in Season 15. Most people called this a long time ago, but it's still just as cool. The scene where the temple transforms, I love the visual effects and the animation here. And then we see the Overlord in his shadow form, which is kind of reminiscent of Garbodot's shadow form in the pilots. So another one of those cool parallels or similarities. I like how this episode doesn't try to hide the fact that the Crystal King is the Overlord. It doesn't try to make it a big plot twist or reveal, which we've seen a lot of recent Ninjago seasons do. And now the scene where Ruby agrees to serve the Overlord, there's so much character analysis to be done here. Ruby initially is inclined to refuse the Overlord because she fears that he'll destroy everything, but then he says this line about peace in the dark. And Ruby's original intent back in Season 8 was to essentially secure order, to secure peace, so that people wouldn't suffer from chaos like she did. And none of this really happens, but that was her goal. And so when the Overlord says this line about ending conflict, she decides to go along with him. It's such a complex scene, and these details make it so much more meaningful. I like how this episode then shifts to a Ruby all along type angle, where we see that she really has been behind the scenes this whole time. I love that they choose scenes and moments that we saw in past seasons a few years ago. Her interaction with Vangelis is pretty awesome, and it explains why she has this tense interaction with him in episode 12. Obviously, she's not too pleased with him after his Vegestone operation was shut down. And back to the present, we see Lloyd and Ruby interacting again, and this is great. We get to see more of her manipulative side, and they focus a lot here on the aftermath of her death in Hunted, how she's mad at Lloyd for not saving her from the building. And this episode really hammers in that Lloyd never really got over Ruby. I love this flashback of him searching in the rubble for her body. It shows that he wanted at least some form of closure, even if it meant that she was dead. And yeah, I don't have too much to say about the rest of the episode after this. I think Ruby explaining her plan is pretty cool. And even the end of the episode with the Crystal King appearing on the crystal and that new version of his soundtrack that plays in the credits is so good. I don't have anything too critical to say about this episode. Some of Ruby's comedic lines were a bit, strange coming from the character, but not bad. In terms of plot, this episode organizes its story really well for 11 minutes. This episode is more proof that 11-minute episodes focused on flashbacks are really good, and one of the best uses of the 11-minute format. Obviously for characters, Ruby's the highlight here. I feel that this episode pretty much nails the character and stays very faithful to how she was in seasons 8 and 9. The Overlord is great too, and he feels definitely better than how he was in seasons 3 and 2. The character feels more deep, like he has more of a vision beyond just evil everywhere. I also love Lloyd's reaction to everything in this episode, and how he deals with Ruby's return. The action in this episode, I don't think there's too much of it. No crazy fights or anything, and that's definitely not a bad thing. Last but not least, the emotion is fantastic here, especially the hunted flashback where we see Lloyd attempting to find Ruby's body. In case you couldn't already tell, this episode gets the full 10 out of 10 for me. It is a very good episode that so far does the bad idea really well. It is a very strong start to Crystalized Part 2, and has set the tone excellently. Thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone different you know. Share thoughts on episode 13, A Sinister Shadow, below, and I'll see you guys next time.